I let my parents stay in my home rent-free for 3 years until they told me to move out so my brother could get a better start. So I gave them 2 days to go. Turns out I needed a fresh start too. My own mom, with my dad silently backing her up, looked me straight in the eye and told me I needed to move out of my own house. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because my brother, Ethan, needed a fresh start there. I was stunned, but what I did next set off a chain reaction no one saw coming. The kitchen, usually a place of warm smells and morning banter, felt suddenly cold, heavy. The air was thick with unspoken words, and the coffee I'd just poured seemed to lose all its warmth. I'm Noah, recently turned 28. For years, I truly believed in the family-first motto my parents instilled in us. We were a typical Midwest family. My dad, solid and practical, worked for the city for decades. My mom, a homemaker turned part-time receptionist. They preached that family sticks together, and I bought into it completely. Maybe too much. I worked relentlessly in IT, sacrificing vacations and living on ramen to buy my first home at 25. It wasn't fancy, just a ranch with good bones I earned entirely myself. So, when my parents hit a rough patch, my dad's pension delayed, mom's hours cut, I didn't hesitate. I invited them to stay rent-free for as long as they needed. I even gave them the master bedroom, moving into a smaller guest room myself. Everyone said I was doing a good thing. And for the first year, it felt like it. Dinners together, mom's cooking, dad's odd repairs. My younger brother, Ethan, then 20 and still figuring himself out, would visit, laundry in hand. My parents always babysat him, but I just saw it as a youngest child thing. By year 2, the cracks started to show. Quietly. Slowly. My parents got too comfortable. My fridge became a community pantry. Groceries vanished. I'd return from a work trip to find new, unapproved furniture, mom's brightening touches. My dad took over the garage, turning it into his personal workshop, even locking my lawnmower in there with his key. Still, I dismissed it. They're grateful, I told myself, just showing it differently. But I began to feel like a guest in my own home, needing to knock before entering the living room. Then Ethan dropped out of college. He moved back in. Not exactly with them, but with me. He was crashing on my couch half the week, then full-time. Nights were filled with him gaming in the living room, feet on my coffee table, yelling into his headset. I'd wake to empty soda cans, pizza boxes, and the undeniable smell of weed, despite my requests to keep it out. I tried to talk to my parents, gently at first. Maybe Ethan could contribute? My dad grunted. My mom gave me that wounded look, like I'd just suggested abandoning a puppy. He's your brother, Noah. He's just going through a rough time. Don't be so hard on him. Rough time or not, I felt squeezed. My house, the one I paid for, was becoming a place I rented a room in. Every boundary I set met passive-aggressive comments from mom, silence from dad, or Ethan's joking, "Relax, Mr. Landlord. We'll leave the light on for you." By year 3, I felt like a ghost. I spent more time at coffee shops, the gym, even just parked somewhere to find silence. One night, I came home to Ethan's friends, blaring music, smoke trailing from the back door. I snapped. I told him to shut it down, reminded him this was my house. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're acting like you own the place." I stood there stunned. "I do own the place," I said, low and slow. He smirked. "Well, you sure don't act like it." That night, I truly realized something was broken. Not just the situation, but the respect, the gratitude, the unspoken contract. I lay awake, replaying every time I bit my tongue, every slide I let go, because that's just family. I'd sacrificed my space, my peace, my comfort. For what? The real tipping point, though, came from my mother. 3 days later, Saturday morning, as I poured coffee, she sat me down at the kitchen table. Her expression was serene, almost rehearsed. My dad sat next to her, arms crossed, a silent statue. "Noah," she began, "Ethan needs a better start. It's been hard for him, and we've noticed you seem stressed. Maybe it's time for a change." I blinked. "What kind of change?" She sighed. "We were thinking it might be better if you took a little break. Moved out for a while. Let Ethan settle in here. You've got a good job." You can find a nice apartment. It would only be temporary, of course, just until Ethan's back on his feet. The audacity hit me like a slap. My fingers tightened around the coffee mug. I looked at my dad, searching for a hint of disbelief of this being a mistake. But he just said, "It's only fair. He's younger. He needs a foundation." I didn't answer. I just stared, not angry yet, just numb. My brain couldn't process it. They were kicking me out of my own home. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but so Ethan, who paid for nothing, contributed nothing, could have a better start. I took a breath, set the mug down. In the calmest voice I could muster, I asked, "You want me to leave my house?" My mom nodded. "Just for a little while. For Ethan. You're strong, Noah. You'll land on your feet." That moment changed something deep inside me. A quiet rage settled in. Not loud, not explosive, just resolved. I stood up, nodded, and said, "Okay, then I guess we all need a fresh start." And I meant it. I gave them 2 days. But that's not where the story ends. That's just where it begins. Because they didn't realize how long I'd been holding back. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I didn't throw an insult. That's what caught them off guard. I think they expected an explosion. But I just walked upstairs, closed the door to my small room, the room I downgraded to in my own house, and sat there. Staring at the walls I'd painted, the floor I'd installed, the closet I'd built. Every inch of this house had my effort etched into it, and they wanted to evict me like a squatter. That night, I didn't sleep. My brain wouldn't shut off. It replayed every little thing I'd ignored over 3 years. How I stopped hosting friends because it made Dad uncomfortable. How I couldn't work in my home office because Mom turned it into her craft room. How Ethan ate my labeled leftovers like a dare. And now, after all that, I was the one who needed to go. I waited until morning. Breakfast was on the table. Mom acted like everything was normal. Ethan, half asleep, scrolled on his phone. I poured coffee, leaned against the counter, and said, "You've got 2 days." They all looked up. "What?" my dad asked. "You wanted a fresh start," I replied, calm. "So, I'm giving you one. You have 48 hours to pack your things and find somewhere else." Ethan scoffed. "Are you serious right now?" Mom stood, her voice shaking. "Noah, this isn't what we meant. You're being irrational. We weren't kicking you out. We were asking you to help your brother." I shrugged. "And I'm choosing to help myself." I left the kitchen before the argument could erupt. I wasn't in the mood for manipulation or fake tears. I went to work, closed the door, turned off my phone. I needed peace. And for once, I wasn't apologizing for it. The next 48 hours were awkward. Mom tried the guilt angle, leaving photo albums open, muttering, "I just don't know where we'll go." Dad's silence was heavy. Ethan sulked, muttering jabs like, "Guess some people forget who raised them." I remembered. I remembered who paid for plumbing repairs, mowed the lawn, fixed the dryer. I remembered me. When the 48 hours were up, I found Mom still unpacked. Dad sat, arms crossed. Ethan lounged. "I wasn't kidding," I said. "You all need to leave today." Dad stood. "You'd throw your own family onto the street?" "I gave you 3 years of free living," I replied. "No rent, no bills, not even respect for my space. But asking me to leave my own house? That was the line. You crossed it. Now it's your turn to figure things out." That afternoon, they left, begrudgingly, with dramatic farewells and bitter glances. Mom thought I'd cave, kept pausing, waiting for an emotional breakdown. It never came. I held the door open, watched them leave, then locked it. I thought a few weeks of space would cool everything off. I was wrong. A week later, my aunt called. "Noah, honey, your parents are staying with me. They said, you kicked them out to sell the house and move out of state." I blinked. "What?" "I know that's not true," she sighed. "But your mom's telling everyone you've changed, that you're cold, ungrateful." It was a punch to the gut. The smear campaign had begun. But the real betrayal came 2 weeks later. Scrolling emails, I saw one from my mortgage provider, mortgage transfer request. Someone had attempted to transfer the deed to Ethan. The document was real. It listed my property, my loan, my address, and the signature, my father's. He tried to sign over my mortgage without my permission. I froze. Couldn't breathe. My hands trembled. How was this possible? They weren't on the title. I called the mortgage company immediately. They assured me no changes were made. But the fact that they tried, that broke something in me. I called my dad, straight to voicemail. Then Mom. She picked up. Noah, she said, her voice sweet. Are you okay? Did you really try to give Ethan the house? I asked, my voice low. Silence. Noah, I think you're misunderstanding. Don't, I cut her off. Don't lie. I saw the paperwork. I saw Dad's signature. Her voice faltered. We thought maybe it would be easier for you if Ethan took over. You're always traveling, and you said you wanted a fresh start, so we assumed. You assumed what? I snapped. That you could steal my house? We weren't stealing, Noah, she said, defensive now. You weren't using it properly. It was chaotic. You were angry all the time. Ethan needs structure, a home base. You're grown. You'll land on your feet. Those words again. Like I was a cat being tossed out a window. I hung up. No goodbye. No scream. Just silence, staring at my laptop screen, a strange numbness creeping over me. This wasn't just disrespect. It wasn't just favoritism. They had tried to take my house. They saw what I built, every brick, every light fixture, every cabinet handle I installed, and decided it should go to Ethan because he was starting out. Because he needed it more. Because I was strong and he was weak. And somehow that meant I owed him everything. That night, I didn't sleep again. But this time, I wasn't tossing and turning. I was planning. Something inside me had shifted. Not rage, not revenge yet, but clarity. Cold, focused clarity. If they thought they could take my house, they hadn't begun to understand what I was capable of when I stopped holding back. And believe me, I had stopped. I didn't leave the house much in the days after the forged mortgage request. Every time I stepped outside, I worried I'd see their faces. My parents, Ethan, maybe at the gas station or the diner. Or standing in front of my house like they still belonged there. That was the worst part. How wrong it all felt. How inverted. They were the ones who'd used me, lied to me, tried to steal from me. Yet I was the one hiding inside like a fugitive. I told myself I was processing. But the truth was I was shattered. Not on the outside. I still looked like me, still worked, still made polite small talk on Zoom. But inside, I was floating in a hollow space where all the certainty I'd had about my family, about loyalty, about being a good son, was just gone. That was the real loss. Not the attempted fraud. It was the death of the story I'd told myself for 28 years. The one where family came first. That if I gave enough, loved hard enough, they'd always be in my corner. That being the responsible one meant something. Turns out, it just made me the easiest target. The rumors started spreading quickly. My mom was always the type to make casual comments at church that framed her as a long-suffering saint. My dad, quiet, backed her up by saying nothing, giving her more credibility. Soon, neighbors looked at me like I was cold, ungrateful. Half frowns at the grocery store, polite nods with no eye contact. Even my barber asked, "So, you really kicked your folks out over a disagreement?" I wanted to scream or disappear. Instead, I shrank. I stopped going to the gym, ordered groceries online, worked weird hours. At night, I'd just sit, staring at the walls, replaying conversations where I stood up for myself, clearer, earlier. But those conversations never happened. It got to the point where I stopped answering calls. Even from friends. Then Sam, my high school friend, showed up at my door one Saturday with a six-pack. Still breathing in there, he asked, raising an eyebrow. I forced a smile. He didn't push. Just dropped onto the couch and cracked a beer. We sat, watched basketball, laughed at a dumb ad. Then, during a quiet stretch, he said, "You know, you didn't deserve any of that, right?" I didn't respond. "I'm serious," he added. "You're one of the most solid people I know, and they treated you like a free ride. That's not your fault, man. That's on them." Something about the way he said it, the finality, stuck. It was the first time in weeks I felt someone saw what I was going through. No spin, no manipulation, just the truth. Sam didn't stay long, just enough to check in. But after he left, I did something I hadn't done in months. I stood up. I walked into the guest room, my room now and grabbed a dusty cardboard box. Inside were the business cards, notebooks, sketches for an idea I'd shelved years ago, my own consulting firm. It had always been a someday plan. I was too busy, too comfortable. But comfort had turned to rot. And now I had nothing left to lose. The next few weeks weren't glamorous. I worked like a man possessed. 16-hour days building a website, registering an LLC, pitching clients. I reached out to every contact. Most ignored me. A few didn't. That was enough. Slowly, quietly, I started rebuilding. One contract at a time. I brought in more than my last quarter of corporate work. It wasn't flashy. I wasn't posting about it online. Every step forward made the bitterness fade just a little more. I reclaimed my office, painted over Mom's pastel green with sharp navy blue. Mine. I sold the couch Ethan had destroyed with energy drinks and grease, and bought a sleek leather one. Black, minimalist, untouchable. I even turned the master bedroom into a luxury Airbnb listing. Not for anyone else, for me. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't building a life for anyone else to crash into. I was building it for me. Bit by bit, the silence that used to haunt me became peace. Of course, they tried to claw back in. A text from my mom. Hope you're doing okay. Your dad says hi. We're staying with Ethan's girlfriend's family now. It's not ideal. Maybe we could meet for coffee sometime. I didn't reply. Then an email. Noah, your father's birthday is coming up. We'd love to have dinner. No drama. Please consider it. Still, nothing. I knew what they wanted. Access, not forgiveness. They weren't sorry. They were uncomfortable, displaced. And in their minds, I was still the safe option, the backup plan. But I wasn't a backup anymore. I was done being plan B. The final straw came from Ethan. A voicemail. Hey bro. So listen. I know things got out of hand. Water under the bridge, right? Anyway, I'm looking at apartments, and it's rough out here. If you've got any space, just temporarily, I'd appreciate it. Could throw you some cash when I land a job. Just like old times. Just like old times. That line echoed in my head. It was stunning how someone could casually gloss over the wreckage they caused. How easily they assumed the door would always be open. This time, I didn't just ignore it. I saved the message. Proof. Proof that they'd never change. They didn't see what they did as wrong. They just saw it as inconvenient. That day, I decided I wouldn't just move on. I would move forward on my terms. Quietly, methodically, I began preparing something more than a personal rebound. I started documenting everything. The fraudulent mortgage attempt, the forged signature, the texts and voicemails. I contacted Lydia, a lawyer, not just for advice, but for protection. If they ever tried anything again, I'd be ready. I also started looking for new property. Not to move out. This house was mine. But I was thinking bigger. Commercial property, office space, a headquarters for my consulting firm. Somewhere downtown, somewhere visible. I'd been living small for too long, hiding behind modesty and family obligation like they were virtues instead of cages. Not anymore. The fall had come. Now it was time to rise. And soon enough, they'd see it. Not in a loud, vengeful way. Not yet. But in the quiet horror of realizing the man they dismissed, used, and tried to erase was doing better without them than they'd ever imagined. And deep down, I think they knew. Because when the messages stopped coming, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I wasn't interested in theatrics. I didn't need some elaborate takedown. What I wanted was precision, quiet consequences. The kind that settled into people's bones slowly, day by day, until they realized the weight they carried was one they'd strapped on themselves. That's the difference between anger and clarity. Anger wants fire. Clarity wants results. And for the first time in my life, I was thinking clearly. I didn't tell anyone I was planning anything. Not Sam, not my coworkers, not even Lydia at first. I just kept building. Publicly, it looked like I was thriving, and I was. But privately, I was also sharpening. The first step was reclaiming the narrative. My parents had always been storytellers, subtle, passive-aggressive ones. They knew how to shape perception, how to twist facts just enough to make themselves seem noble while painting everyone else as volatile or selfish. I used to let them. But now, their version of events was being passed around like gospel. I knew they were still talking. My aunt would send the occasional message, acting as their mouthpiece. I knew they were bitter. So, I started planting seeds. I reached out to a few old acquaintances, people who had heard their story. I didn't come with fire or bitterness. I just talked. Explained what had really happened, what I'd really done for them, and what they had tried to do to me. It wasn't about gossip. It was about truth. And once you lay it out fact by fact, receipt by receipt, people realize how lopsided things were. Oh, I didn't know you paid the mortgage on your own all those years. They tried to forge a mortgage transfer? That always landed hard, especially with the email evidence. The ripple effect wasn't immediate, but it started. One mutual friend uninvited my parents from a community potluck. A local charity they volunteered with quietly stopped calling them. Not because I asked, but because truth, when exposed, infects lies and hollows them out from the inside. But that wasn't the revenge. That was just cleanup. The real plan was still taking shape. And it started with Ethan. He was always the weak link. The one who thought confidence and entitlement were the same thing. The kind of guy who believed people deserved handouts because the world was unfair. As if the universe owed him something just for showing up. Ethan had never held a job longer than 6 months. Always blamed management or rigged systems. The truth was, he just didn't like being told what to do. He thought he was too smart for the system, which is why he'd started calling himself an entrepreneur online. In reality, he was selling knockoff sneakers and trying to launch a crypto YouTube channel with 6 subscribers, one being my mom. I muted him everywhere, but kept a burner account to keep tabs. Not because I cared, but because I wanted to know how reckless he was willing to be. Then he gave me the perfect opening. He posted a public video on his channel, talking about his newfound experience in property investment. He sat in a borrowed car wearing knockoff sunglasses, telling subscribers he almost inherited a property, but gave it up for family reasons. Then he smirked. But the next one, that one's going to be mine. I watched it 3 times. Not angry. Amused. Ethan wanted the appearance of success. More than actual success. He needed to look like a winner. And that made him vulnerable. So I called Lydia, my lawyer. She was smart, saw 5 moves ahead. I laid everything out. What they did, the attempted fraud, the voicemail, Ethan's investor persona. I wasn't looking to sue, not yet. But I wanted options, protections, leverage. She reviewed it all. After a few days, she came back with a simple, effective strategy. Document the mortgage fraud attempt officially. File a notarized letter with the county stating an unauthorized request was made. We weren't accusing anyone publicly, but we were putting a legal wall around my property. If anyone tried something again, it would be flagged and on record. That was the start of the chessboard. Next came phase 2, reputation. I created a sleek, professional website for my consulting business. But I added a personal blog section, a side project. On that blog, I began writing articles. Not rants, not hit pieces. Stories. Essays about boundaries, toxic family dynamics, what it's like to be the responsible one in a dysfunctional system. I never named names. Never even mentioned my town. But the stories were real, and they hit home for a lot of people. The blog gained traction. People shared it, commented, reached out privately. It even got picked up by a mid-sized self-improvement site that syndicated 3 of my posts. Suddenly, I wasn't just Noah, the guy with a messed-up family. I was Noah, the founder, the writer, the guy who got out and built something. And that made me dangerous. While they were stuck spinning their tired web of manipulation, I was building a platform and a network. One person who reached out after reading my blog was Jordan, a real estate agent. She'd been through a similar situation. We grabbed coffee. Turned out, she knew Ethan's girlfriend's family. Oh, them? She smirked. Yeah, Ethan's already wearing out his welcome. Thinks he's some kind of genius investor. Keeps asking her dad for a loan to start a flipping business. I nearly laughed into my cup. The more she told me, the more pieces fell into place. Ethan told everyone he chose to walk away from the house. My parents were still painting me as a cold, emotionally stunted son who'd lost his way. And yet, none of them had moved forward. Not an inch. They were stagnant, hoping for a miracle or for me to cave. So, I started crafting one more plan. The kind that doesn't make noise, but leaves an echo. I found a small commercial building for sale. A 2-story brick space on the edge of downtown. Previously a law firm. It had offices, a conference room, and, most importantly, an upstairs apartment. Perfect. I bought it in cash. Didn't flinch. Then I announced my firm's expansion. Quietly at first. An email to my clients, a soft launch post on LinkedIn, photos of the renovations. It spread faster than I expected. Old friends reached out. Old enemies noticed. Then came the whispers. Did you hear Noah opened his own building? I thought he was struggling. Isn't he the one whose parents had to leave his house? I didn't answer any of it. The setup was almost complete. The final stroke came when Ethan messaged me again. No apology, no accountability, just a simple line. Hey bro, heard you opened a new office. Pretty cool. Got room upstairs? I could help out with some side stuff. Could be fun working together. That's when I knew they hadn't changed at all. They still believed I was a fallback. They still believed I had room. They still believed I'd forget. And that was going to be their biggest mistake. Because now, I wasn't just rebuilding. I was preparing. Not for reconciliation, not for forgiveness. But for the moment they'd finally see with perfect clarity what it looks like when the person you underestimated decides they're done being your foundation and starts building something without you. And I promise you, that moment was coming. Revenge, when done right, doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need to be loud, messy, or vindictive. It just needs to work. And when it lands, it shouldn't look like revenge at all. It should look like consequence. That was the mindset I carried into the final act. By the time I opened the doors to my new office, the transformation was complete. The building had been gutted and remodeled. Sleek floors, clean walls, sharp lighting. My firm, Noah Consulting, had picked up 3 major retainer clients and a handful of small business contracts in 6 months. I had a small team working with me now. Upstairs, I lived like a king in a minimalist loft I designed myself. Simple, efficient, quiet. It was the kind of peace I hadn't known in years. I didn't make a big show of anything. No ribbon cutting, no launch party. Just progress. Just momentum. And they noticed. My aunt reported my mother had started asking about me again, not directly, but through concerned questions at church. Is Noah doing okay? We haven't heard from him in so long. Poor thing. He's just so isolated now. But she knew. They knew. The whispers were getting louder. People in town weren't buying their story anymore, especially after the feature. A local business magazine spotlighted new entrepreneurs revitalizing downtown. Jordan, the real estate agent, put my name forward. She thought I had a good story. The writer came by, took photos, interviewed me about my career, the firm, the renovation, even my philosophy on leadership and boundaries. It went live on a Wednesday. By Thursday morning, it was the top story on their homepage. The title, Reclaiming More Than a Building, How One Consultant Turned Betrayal into a Business. It didn't name my parents. It didn't have to. The opening paragraph made it clear. After a devastating breach of trust within his own family, 29-year-old Noah Greer took the pieces of what was nearly stolen and built something stronger, not just for himself, but for others seeking to break toxic cycles. It was elegant, subtle, powerful. People noticed. That same day, I got a text from an unknown number. Mom, saw the article. Beautiful photos. We're happy for you. No apology, no admission, just another shallow attempt to keep a toe in the door. I ignored it. But the real revenge came in 2 parts. Part 1. Ethan's big opportunity. About a month after the article dropped, Ethan posted on social media that he was finally launching his first investment, a flip, a single-story house on the edge of town. He framed it like a massive real estate deal, like he was entering the big leagues. But I knew the truth. Jordan had told me he'd barely qualified for a loan, begged his girlfriend's dad for a cosign, and relied on free labor from friends. Worse, he had no plan, no timeline. He thought watching a few TikToks made him an expert. So, I made a call. Not to sabotage. I didn't need to. I just called the city. I asked for a copy of the renovation permits Ethan had filed. Turns out, he hadn't filed any. No electrician, no plumbing, no structural inspections. Nothing. And the part he really didn't see coming, that house had a busted water main under the lawn. An issue flagged 2 owners ago, never fixed because the house sat vacant. The city had flagged it as pending remediation, meaning any sale or major renovation required a full utility inspection and environmental clearance. But Ethan didn't check any of that. He just jumped in. So, when he posted he was almost done with renovations, I sent an anonymous tip to the city planning office. Just a screenshot of his post, location tagged, showing clear structural work without permits. They shut him down 2 days later. A city inspector arrived, documented multiple violations, and posted a bright red stop work order. It derailed the entire project. His flip was now a money pit, and with no inspections, no approvals, no legal renovations, it couldn't be sold without major remediation. Ethan went quiet on social media for weeks. Then one day, Jordan texted me. He tried to list the house off market. No takers. Heard he's trying to offload it back to the bank. I didn't reply. I just smiled. Part 2. The house they forgot was mine. After the Ethan fiasco, I decided it was time to deal with the original crime, the attempted mortgage transfer. Lydia, my lawyer, had been quietly building a file over the past year. She documented the forged request, the digital signature, the emails, the messages. It was rock solid. But I wasn't suing. Not yet. Instead, I called in a favor. One of my clients ran a local financial literacy nonprofit. They did workshops for young adults, struggling families. I offered to sponsor their next 3 events and redesign their website on the condition I host one event in my office space. They agreed. We planned it, marketed it, Rebuilding After Financial Betrayal, a free event for anyone who'd experienced manipulation, theft, or toxic money dynamics in families. I expected 20 people. We got 60. The place was packed. I opened the event with a short talk, just 15 minutes. But I told my story. Not with names, but with details. How I bought my first house young, let family move in. How it started with love and ended with them trying to sign the deed over without my knowledge. How I rebuilt, how I learned, how I came out stronger. There were tears in the crowd. Afterward, people came up, shook my hand, shared their own stories, booked consultations. That was the final blow. My parents showed up, not to the event, they wouldn't dare. But later that week, my mother messaged me. I heard about your little workshop. Was that really necessary? And that's when I knew they were watching. They were losing control. The narrative was no longer theirs. They couldn't spin it. Couldn't twist it. The town wasn't buying it. Their golden child had outgrown them, and they had nothing left to take. I replied with just one sentence. I told the truth. That's something you never taught me how to do. In the months that followed, my parents faded from public life. They stopped attending community events. Word got around that Ethan had defaulted on his house and was living back with them again, only this time in a cramped duplex rental outside of town. Their silence was deafening. No more messages, no more voicemails. They were ghosts now. But I wasn't haunted. I was free. My firm grew. I brought on more clients, hired 2 interns, expanded into the space next door. Jordan and I, well, we started seeing each other more often. She was sharp, grounded, funny in that dry, I've seen some stuff kind of way. She never asked me to shrink. She knew I'd already spent too long doing that. One night we sat on the rooftop of my building, watching the streetlights below, and she asked, "Do you ever miss them?" I thought about it, really thought. And I said, "No, I miss who I thought they were." She nodded. "That's fair." And we sat there in silence, not because there was nothing left to say, but because I didn't need to say anything else. That chapter was closed. What would you have done?